Some places are better left forgotten, buried in time and silence, but when curiosity drives you to disturb the dead, you may not like what awakens. Blackthorn Asylum sat on the outskirts of town, its massive stone walls hidden behind a sea of twisted trees and thick undergrowth. The old mental hospital had been closed for over 40 years, its history drowned in mystery and hushed whispers. The locals told stories of inhumane treatments, patients that disappeared, and the doctors who were said to have lost their minds just like those they were supposed to treat. A group of friends, Ryan, Emma, Luke, and Sarah, had always been intrigued by the stories. They weren't the type to believe in ghost tales, but they craved the thrill of the unknown. And so, one night, they decided to investigate the abandoned asylum. Armed with flashlights, a video camera, and plenty of nerves, they set off for what they thought would be a night of harmless fun. As they approached Blackthorn Asylum, the air felt colder. The iron gates, once strong and imposing, were rusted and broken. The massive front doors creaked open as they pushed through, revealing the decaying remains of the asylum's lobby. The floor was littered with broken tiles, and the walls were peeling, exposing the rotten bones of the building.
This is amazing.
Ryan, the bravest of the group, led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness.
Let's get some footage.
Luke, the one holding the camera, hit record. The red light blinked on, casting a dull glow in the pitch-black hallway.
So, this is where they used to keep the worst of the worst, huh? Lobotomies, shock therapy, the whole deal? They say some of the patients never left?
Cut it out, Luke. You're scaring Sarah.
Sarah, the quietest and most sensitive of the group, was already on edge. She had been against coming from the start, but now that they were inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As they ventured deeper into the asylum, the corridors grew narrower, the air heavier. Strange graffiti covered the walls, symbols none of them recognized, drawn in dark red paint that almost looked like it had been freshly applied.
It's wet,
she muttered, wiping her fingers on her jacket. Suddenly, there was a noise, a faint scratching sound coming from the darkness ahead. They all froze.
Did you hear that?
Ryan asked, shining his flashlight into the distance. The beam flickered for a moment before going out. Luke's camera screen began to glitch, showing static and flickers of black shapes that darted too fast to identify. We should go back, Sarah said, her voice trembling, but Ryan shook his head.
It's just old wiring or something? Come on, we're almost to the treatment rooms.
Reluctantly, they continued. The hallways seemed to stretch longer than they should have, twisting and turning as if the building itself were alive, shifting around them. They passed old patient cells, the doors rusted shut, and saw the remnants of what looked like old restraints hanging from the walls. And then they found the treatment room. It was a large cold space with rusted medical equipment strewn across the floor. In the center of the room stood an old metal chair, with leather straps still attached to the arms and legs. The air reeked of mildew and something metallic, like dried blood.
Ryan moved closer to the chair, shining his flashlight over it. This is where they performed the lobotomies, he said quietly. They used to strap the patients down and...
Before he could finish, the flashlight flickered again, but this time it didn't come back on. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway behind them. Everyone turned, hearts pounding.
Who's there? Luke called out, his voice cracking. The camera's night vision activated, casting everything in a sickly green hue. Through the grainy screen, he caught movement, something darting past the doorway. There! Luke pointed the camera toward the hallway, but when the others looked, nothing was there.
Let's leave, Sarah pleaded, her voice barely a whisper now. Please, let's go. Ryan hesitated but nodded.
All right, let's get out of here.
But as they turned back to leave, the doorway was gone. The hallway behind them had changed. Where there had once been an open passage, there was now just a wall.
That's impossible,
Emma stammered, running her hands over the cold stone.
We came this way.
Ryan insisted, pushing against the wall, trying to find some hidden door or passage. But there was nothing. And then the scratching started again. This time it was louder, closer. The group huddled together, their breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. Luke turned the camera back on and scanned the room, but as the green light swept across the walls, he froze. There, in the corner of the room, stood a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, its body twisted and malformed, like a patient who had undergone countless failed procedures. Its eyes gleamed white in the darkness, locked onto them.
What is that?
Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure moved, its limbs cracking unnaturally as it took a step forward. The scratching sound grew louder, coming from its long bony fingers as they scraped along the floor.
Run!
Ryan shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand. They bolted for the far wall, searching desperately for an exit. But the walls seemed to close in around them, the doors disappearing, the rooms shifting. The figure was getting closer, its grotesque form moving in erratic, jerking motions, its eyes never leaving them. Luke turned the camera toward the figure again, only to see that it wasn't alone. There were more of them, shadows, twisted figures emerging from the walls, their hollow eyes filled with hunger. They were the patients of Blackthorn Asylum, and they had never left. The friends screamed as the creatures descended upon them. The last thing the camera captured was the sound of their screams, drowned out by the scraping of long, bony fingers against the cold stone floor. Some places are haunted not by ghosts, but by the memories of those who suffered, and the things they became. Blackthorn Asylum was never abandoned. It's still very much alive,